Tonight, signature deal. The bill to lift the debt ceiling heads to the president's desk. Plus, refilling the well.
Nature gave us a lifeline, and we can't waste that lifeline, right?
Major winter storms are helping depleted reservoirs, and the federal government is working to keep water sources from running dry. And abortion after Roe.
With the overturn of Roe, every state has to determine what the law will become.
A ballot initiative in Ohio could make access to abortion permanent. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The debt deal heads to the Oval Office. Good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. Crisis averted. The political roller coaster over the debt limit is over, at least for now. The bill to lift the debt ceiling and prevent America from defaulting on its debt hit President Biden's desk today. CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka has our top story, including a breakdown of how the bill made it with just days to spare ahead of Monday's default deadline. Matt?
Jenna, the Senate worked quickly as it was up against that tight deadline and the threat of America running out of money. But in the end, it was a bipartisan push that got the deal through.
On this vote, the yeas are 63, the nays are 36. The 60-vote threshold having been achieved, the bill is passed.
A bipartisan effort got the deal done. 44 Democrats and 17 Republicans voted yes in the Senate during a session that lasted into Thursday night.
President Biden and his negotiating team have accomplished the least bad outcome we could have hoped for, given how extreme the demands of the House Republican majority were.
The deal suspends the debt ceiling until 2025 and is estimated to cut the deficit by $1.5 trillion over the next decade. It also returns billions of dollars in unused COVID funds and IRS funding to the government. It also adds some work requirements for welfare programs, a provision that angered progressive Democrats.
This debt ceiling agreement will cut programs for some of the most vulnerable people in America.
A majority of Republicans in the Senate voted against it, saying the deal didn't do enough.
I'm disappointed that there's not more victories for American workers. And I will just say again, I think the most important deficit we have is our trade deficit. And until we do something about that, I think we're not putting this economy on a path for true broad-based growth.
This is really dumb. We put ourselves in a position where if we don't pass all the appropriation bills, the cuts negotiated by the House to non-defense are wiped out.
The back and forth wrangling between the White House and the House Speaker went on for months leading up to negotiations and the ultimate passage of the bill.
But they have to do their job. They have to pass a clean debt ceiling, debt limit. They have to do that.
But the president waited 97 days, not even to talk to me. He could have spoken to me and said we were wrong on other angles, but he didn't.
In the end, it was a Washington compromise brokered to prevent default.
So it won't be today. The House and the Senate have to do their business, and so we're going to work very quickly with them to get this done, to make sure we can sign it hopefully as soon as tomorrow.
And the president should be signing that with just days to spare before Monday's deadline. Another provision of the bill, the freeze on federal student loan repayments, will officially end. That means borrowers will have to start repaying that money at the end of August. Jenna?
All right, Matt, thank you very much. In other news, former Vice President Pence is in the clear. The Justice Department closed the investigation into classified documents found at the Pence home in Indiana with no charges. The DOJ decision comes just days before the former VP is expected to announce his 2024 run for the White House. The case sets up a contrast between Pence and his former boss. Both former President Trump and President Biden are still under special counsel investigations for their handling of classified records. And joining us now, Julia Manchester, national politics reporter with The Hill. Julia, great to have you with us this evening. So no charges for former Vice President Pence. He and his team have to be feeling pretty good tonight.
Yeah, feeling pretty good because they don't necessarily have to deal with that baggage going into a presidential launch next week. You know, next week is going to be very busy for the former vice president. He's, of course, launching his campaign. He'll start officially campaigning as a candidate. And he has a CNN Republican town hall. And that will be interesting because we know that he's likely to face some tough questions there. So, you know, it's going to be easier for the vice president to position himself himself as a candidate who may not have as much baggage as, say, a former President Trump has. We know that he is very much still embroiled in a number of legal issues.
Yeah, next week will be interesting. So on the campaign trail this week, things are heating up between former President Trump and Governor Ron DeSantis. DeSantis really starting to hit back, Julia, this week, going after Trump for Ron DeSanctimonious and other things. DeSantis doesn't seem to be sitting back anymore.
He's not sitting back anymore. And I think a lot of us expected this because before he wasn't an announced candidate and now he's officially in the ring. So I think a lot of those watching the debate, and more importantly for DeSantis, Republican primary voters, were waiting for him to hit back. And it's also a chance for DeSantis to paint himself or present himself as more statesmanlike, more presidential. I mean, you've seen in a number of his responses to President Trump, he talks about how those attacks on his last name, for example, are petty and juvenile, talks about how because of the way President Trump makes fun of people and attacks people, that might be a part of the reason why he's no longer in the White House. But the line that really got me, speaking of his last name, was yesterday. He was asked by Paul Steinhauser, a New Hampshire political reporter, what he thought of the debate Trump has really been spurring about the pronunciation of DeSantis's last name. DeSantis said, "You pronounce my name by saying winner." So clearly a sharp comeback from the governor.
Yeah, we had a whole conversation in our newsroom this week about DeSantis. It's apparently DeSantis, so for all of us, it's that's taking some getting used to. Julia, tonight President Biden will deliver an Oval Office address about the bipartisan debt ceiling deal. How big of a victory is this for President Biden, and will he get any credit with 2024 voters?
Look, I think it's a big victory for President Biden and for Kevin McCarthy. Look, a few months ago, President Biden didn't even want to come to the negotiating table. So for Kevin McCarthy to get him to the negotiating table, that's a victory. And then, of course, we see that Democrats did get some of what they wanted in this legislation. So we're at the point where Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden are practically complementing each other, something we don't see every day here in Washington. The issue for both of them, though, is that the far left and far right flanks of their parties are now upset with the bill. And obviously this bill was a compromise. Neither side is going to get what they want. So they're seeing pushback, and that could impact Biden when it comes to 2024 in terms of enthusiasm, getting more support from those progressive lawmakers. And then, for Kevin McCarthy, look, we've seen some conservative Freedom Caucus members float the idea of challenging him or to oust him from the speakership. That doesn't appear to be happening yet, but it's certainly a scenario that could take place.
All right, Julia Manchester with The Hill. Always good to see you, Julia. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Well, significant water consumption cuts are coming for 3 states out west. It's part of a federal government deal to prevent one of the region's main water sources from running dry. And while these cuts, combined with the slight reprieve from Mother Nature, help the situation, experts say a more permanent solution is needed. Caitlin Burke reports.
Major winter storms here in the Northwest left the Rocky Mountains with one of the largest snowpacks on record. As that snow melts, it's expected to help the depleted reservoirs of the Colorado River, which provides water for 7 states.
Nature gave us a lifeline, and we can't waste that lifeline, right?
The Colorado River feeds Lakes Powell and Meade, the nation's largest reservoirs. Serving 40 million Americans, it would be a catastrophe if the water stopped flowing. Last year, as the reservoirs began to reach dangerously low levels, the federal government stepped in, ordering those states to significantly reduce water use.
Using the water rights did not work for Arizona, and the new alternative to cut across the board did not work for California and its water rights. So neither one worked. And what we said, all of us said, we need to come up with a solution that utilizes what's on the table.
Adele Hodge-Khalil, general manager of the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, says an agreement only happened when the Biden administration threatened a plan of its own that state leaders didn't feel served their best interests.
We've deferred the crisis for 3 years, maybe a little bit longer, but it's still a very urgent problem.
As a part of the New Deal, the 3 states consuming the most water from the Colorado River, Arizona, Nevada, and California, agreed to conserve about 13% of their total allocation. In exchange, they'll receive about $1.2 billion in federal funding. Still, it's no long-term solution.
I suspect that really the only economical way we have to resolve this problem in the long term will be to reduce our agricultural irrigation by about 25%.
Watershed Sciences Director Jay Lund of the University of California, Davis points out that states will ultimately have to adapt to drier conditions and hotter temperatures. And he adds that preserving the region's water supply will likely involve more cuts.
None of us want to see a day where we don't have water. And so we need to be smart. We need to plan and work together to reduce our consumption and manage with the reality that we have.
Haj Khalil suggests working on projects aimed at recycling more wastewater, capturing stormwater, and cleaning up contaminated groundwater.
The next 2 to 3 years are expected to be crucial for those working on a solution to the chronic water supply shortage here, something that will only be possible if everyone comes together. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, the Colorado River.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. And coming up, the man charged with killing 11 worshipers in a Pittsburgh synagogue could face the death penalty. We'll be right back. The trial of the suspect in the nation's deadliest anti-Semitic attack got underway this week, 4.5 years after the shooting deaths of 11 worshipers at a Pittsburgh synagogue. The federal jury in the Tree of Life synagogue mass shooting is hearing the case against 50-year-old Robert Bowers, who faces the death penalty if convicted of some of the 63 counts against him. The October 2018 attack took the lives of victims from 3 separate congregations. The charges include 11 counts each of obstruction of free exercise of religion resulting in death and hate crimes resulting in death. Rabbi Abraham Cooper is the director of the Global Social Action Agenda for the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and he joins us now. Rabbi Cooper, wonderful to have you with us this evening. Welcome. So the Pittsburgh shooting is still the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. I'd like to start with your thoughts as this trial gets underway.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And as it happens, we're talking on Friday Eve, which is the eve of Shabbat, our Sabbath. And tonight and tomorrow, 2% of the American population, many American Jews, will be going to synagogues and temples all over the country. The Tree of Life massacre and other hate crimes targeting our community and our houses of worship are obviously extremely traumatic. They stay with you. You're going with young families. And in the back of your mind, here we are in 2023, and we have to worry about violent attacks against religious minorities. In this case, it's very much in everyone's mind. On the other hand, this is the greatest country we live in. I think people from all over the world understand that. I'm also the vice chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. It's really a fundamental of American life that's also been attacked. Obviously, in this case, the Jewish people, Jewish worshipers were massacred. There's no other word for it. And we're following this particular incident and the trial very, very closely. And at the same time, knowing that we have to deal with the reality of anti-Semitic hate on a daily basis. The head of the FBI said that 63% of all religious-based hate crimes in America target 2.3% of the American population. So it is a part of our reality. I don't think it cowers us from our identities, but it is now really a choice that's being made, especially by younger families, to make sure that they can come and pray on the Sabbath.
I want to ask you, the White House last week came out with a national strategy to combat anti-Semitism, and in that listed the Council on American Islamic Relations as part of the strategy. Your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I want to give high praise to the president for actually putting in motion what became a 60-page document, and a lot of the important things that needed to be said and commitments that needed to be made were made. There were 2 sticking points. One is that the administration did not identify the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism as the baseline for the federal government agencies and the rest of American institutions to use. If you don't have a definition of anti-Semitism, then it's going to be too easy for perpetrators to avoid any responsibility. And that's something that we continue to push for. The second point is that in 2021, CARE was listed in the Simon Wiesenthal Center's top 10 anti-Semitic groups in the United States. Some of their officials have identified Zionist synagogues as dangerous places. They've, compared Israel to ISIS and the Nazis, just over the top, and even in recent days came to the defense of a law school graduate at New York, at CUNY University, in which she just unloaded on Israel, by the way, and the mayor of New York and all the rest. So you can't fight anti-Semitism by including anti-Semites among trusted groups.
Rabbi Cooper, we have to leave it there. We're out of time, unfortunately, but we appreciate you coming on this evening. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate your being there.
We'll be right back. A direct attack on families. That's what opponents are calling a proposed constitutional amendment that would make abortion permanent in Ohio. One freshman lawmaker is on the crusade against the legislation, and she's leaning on her faith to fight for life. CBN's Brody Carter reports.
The current fight over abortion law in Ohio is a sign of things to come in many other states. An amendment to make abortion permanent is expected to be on November's ballot. It's giving voters the chance to decide this issue.
With the overturn of Roe, every state has to determine what the law will become. And so right now, Ohio has been challenged with a ballot initiative.
The initiative is called The Right to Reproductive Freedom with Protections for Health and Safety, backed by organizations with deep pockets, the ACLU and Planned Parenthood. Its passing would cement abortion rights into Ohio's Constitution. CBN News reached out to those behind the amendment and received no response.
In the scriptures, it says that children are a reward, they're a heritage, they're a blessing. They are not a burden, but they are a gift from God.
Fighting for life is central to freshman state representative Melanie Miller's platform.
I had no idea the overturn of Roe would take place in the midst of my campaign last year.
Years before taking a seat in Ohio's House, Miller spent most of her time volunteering at Ashland Pregnancy Care Center. Today, in addition to serving in Ohio's State House, Miller runs the same center that sparked her passion for life.
The work of the Pregnancy Center, it is key. It is God's work. It's fighting against life and death each and every day. And when they've seen their baby on an ultrasound and they can see the smile or they see the fingers and toes and they thank us, for the first time, they felt joy about being pregnant.
Witnessing this hope firsthand is why Representative Miller is all in on stopping the advancement of the proposed abortion amendment. Pro-life leaders, though, tell me a big challenge is the wording in this amendment. They're concerned if passed, it would strip away parental rights for not only abortion, but also gender surgeries.
We know that if they are successful here, they will be coming for constitutions and children all over the country.
Beth Vanderkoy with Greater Columbus Right to Life.
If they are successful, we are going to see an elimination of parental rights. So the involvement of parents before children make life-altering decisions like having an abortion or participating in gender therapy. And we're going to see an expansion of abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy, including painful and cruel procedures on perfectly healthy babies.
Vanderkoy and Miller are partnered with the pro-life coalition, Protect Women Ohio. The group is spending $5 million on ads to educate parents about what's happening.
They added in these really loose language terms such as reproductive decisions. So it could be my 11-year-old daughter going out making decisions without my involvement. She can say, I'm going to go get a sex change, and I can't say or do anything about it because we have this amendment now that eliminates my right as a parent.
Amendment supporters dispute that, saying it doesn't specifically mention transgender surgeries or parental rights.
The amendment provides the right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions. It's literally limited to that. Sexual identity is not reproduction.
But Protect Women Ohio believes it's a real threat.
They chose very broad language intentionally so that they could wrap their entire political agenda into Ohio's Constitution.
Aaron Bayer is helping lead the coalition's campaign. He worries the same tactics pro-abortion groups are using here will soon expand to threaten constitutions and families nationwide.
You know, this constitutional amendment is a pimp and predator's dream because now they're able to prostitute out women, to coerce women, to pressure women, and then cover up their crimes and evidence through abortion.
This amendment is anti-parent, it is anti-life, and it is far too extreme.
Since the fall of Roe v. Wade, California, Michigan, and Vermont have already approved ballot initiatives to amend their constitutions to add abortion rights. Representative Miller encourages everyone to educate themselves with what's happening in their state and join the conversation.
This is the issue of our day. It's like this Esther moment for such a time as this, that God is bringing together people of the Christian faith, people who believe that life is precious and should be protected. And now the country is looking at Ohio.
Politics at the State House ignited protests that spilled into the chambers when GOP lawmakers passed a measure that would make it harder to pass the amendment in November. Now, voters will decide in August if constitutional amendments need a 60% supermajority approval rather than the current simple majority. Abortion amendment supporters need more than 400,000 signatures by June 5th in order to get on the ballot. Regardless of the outcome here, this campaign will likely lead to similar battles over abortion in states across the country. Reporting in Columbus, Ohio, Brody Carter, CBN News.
Finally tonight, America has a new spelling champion. 14-year-old Floridian Dev Shaw won the Scripps National Spelling Bee last night with the correct spelling of Samophile.
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 P-S-A-M-M-O-P-H-I-L-E. Samophile.
That is correct.
The winning word is a noun, and it means any organism that prefers or thrives in sandy soils. A cactus, for example. America's newest top speller was awarded more than $50,000 in cash and prizes. And that's going to do it for Faith Nation. Thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend.